Locally and nationally, fentanyl continues to shatter families and claim the lives of tens of thousands of loved ones.
A former broadcast journalist in South Dakota and a national treatment and prevention advocate has made it her mission to fight addiction. Nearly 7 years ago, the fight became very personal for Angela Kennecke.
The opioid epidemic has hit home in a tragic and devastating way for me personally. On May 16th, my 21-year-old daughter, Emily, died of an overdose. Her official cause of death was fentanyl poisoning.
I could let this loss, this devastation destroy me, or I can do something about it.
If we don't...
Well, most recently, the Trump administration has linked the fight to keep fentanyl out of our communities to the tariffs it's imposed on China, Mexico, and Canada.
Angela Kennecke, founder of Emily's Hope, an addiction awareness resource and prevention nonprofit that she created in honor of her daughter, joins us today to talk about if this effort will help. Angela, it is so great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Emily was a very special person and, your beloved daughter. Will you tell us a little bit about her?
Sure. So Emily was my oldest of four, and she was just 21 when she died from fentanyl poisoning in 2018. And we were shocked. I mean, it was the worst thing I think that can happen to anyone, to a parent. And I didn't really know what I was going to do about it. But eventually I decided I had to speak out and I had to try to stop it from happening to other families. And that's the work that I continue to do to this day.
Well, as you're watching what's happening nationally with the tariffs, the Trump administration is using the flow of fentanyl as one of its primary justifications to launch tariffs against Canada and Mexico. And a lot of drug policy experts are questioning how effective this will be, particularly with Canada. Do you think it's sustainable to go after the supply of fentanyl, or do you think we need to do equally as much to address the demand for the drug here in the U.S.?
So I wish that there was one easy answer to solve this crisis, this horrible drug epidemic, overdose and fentanyl poisoning epidemic that we've been in this country for really the last decade. And it has just escalated over the last decade, although we have seen overdose and fentanyl poisoning deaths go down by about 24% nationwide. In 5 states, the numbers are actually up, but nationwide down about 24%. However, it's still the #1 killer of young people. So we have a huge problem on our hands that we haven't been able to thoroughly address. And one of the reasons for that is because it's complicated, right? I mean, I wish that we could just say, okay, we're going to slap tariffs on these countries that we know, like China, produce the precursors for fentanyl, or Mexico, which make the product and get it into the United States, and that's going to take care of the problem. Could they help? Could they help temporarily? Possibly. China has said it won't play ball. It won't stop the precursors from leaving its country because of the tariffs. Mexico seems to have tried to crack down somewhat on some of the labs. I heard a New York Times reporter talking about it. It was really interesting. But is that sustainable? And Canada, about less than 1% of the fentanyl that comes into the country comes from Canada. So I don't think that's a problem. Canada has a fentanyl problem of its own. Its young people are dying as well. We have a similar problem in both countries in North America. So fentanyl tariffs, to reduce it, to stop it, it could be one tool in the toolbox that could work perhaps temporarily, but it's just such a complicated issue. We have to end the demand in this country. And how do we end the demand? Well, we have to get people who are suffering from substance use disorder, especially opioid use disorder, into medically assisted treatment. And we have to teach our kids to never touch this stuff. And it's not for the developing brain, really no illicit substances for the developing brains. So if we can do those two things in conjunction with other tools, I think we could be successful. But I don't think tariffs are the end-all, be-all to this problem.
And I know Emily's Hope has done a lot of work to increase access to Narcan. You have that curriculum in schools, including children's books, like you said, getting to kids on their level, prevention efforts. So does this show that work like yours is very important, these preventative measures?
I've always believed since we first formed Emily's Hope that prevention is key. I think if we can teach kids how to protect their bodies and brains, if we can start these conversations at a younger age and teach them never to use any of these substances, well, especially while their brain is still developing. And I'm talking about including alcohol and marijuana, all the things that maybe we have seen in the past as a rite of passage for teenagers. It just doesn't lead to anything good for them, for their brains, and for their futures. And so we really believe starting young and warning them about the dangers is so important. And we have to do something about the demand in this country. We also have to provide better treatment for people because we're not doing enough. And as long as the demand exists, you'll have in other countries, such as India, produce the precursors of fentanyl. And you'll have there's just strange ways that it's coming into this country. I heard a really interesting story, if I have time to tell it. Do I have time to tell it?
Quickly.
Okay. Last time I was at a DEA conference, they told me that they're having trouble getting the precursors into Mexico, that Mexico actually cracked down on this. And so they're sending the precursors for fentanyl, which are made in China, into the United States to gangs and organized crime here. And then they're sending the precursors down to the cartels in Mexico who are making the powder. The Mexican cartels are getting the powder back into the United States, plane, ship, packages, through legal checkpoints, hidden in things. And then they're being pressed into pills here in the United States and then distributed by Americans to other Americans. So we have a problem on our hands that isn't just a problem with somebody else in a foreign nation. We have a big problem on our hands when it comes to supply and demand.
Well, Angela, we are so sorry for the loss of your beautiful daughter. From one mom to another, I can't tell you how much I admire you for taking your personal heartbreak and turning it into something to pay it forward for so many others. So this conversation will continue, and we hope you'll continue to be part of it with us as things develop.
You're invited on the show anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Best of luck with Emily's Hope. And for those watching, we'll have a lot more information about the organization on our website.
And we'll be right back.